When you talked about the ayahuasca experience, and you talked about the goddess coming to you, and that you choose to believe that it's real, my thoughts on this whole what is real and what is not real thing, what I've been thinking lately is that it doesn't really even matter.
Yeah.
Because what it is it's about the experience itself. And the best parts of psychedelic experiences are the learning parts. It sounds like so boring to people because they think like, oh no, I thought I was going to see amazing things and I was going to watch elephants fly and it was going to be mad hallucinations, which does occur sometimes, but that's not what it's really about. What it's really about is about a learning experience. It's about massive leaps in development of your personality and your psyche, your worldview, your personal view. And these massive leaps that happen through psychedelics, they happen exactly the same way if you really do encounter a goddess or if this goddess is just conjured up by your imagination in incredibly vivid detail. Either one is the same experience to you personally.
Yeah. I think that's a very important point.
It's a very important point because, yes, it might be a hallucination, but it is immensely beneficial. Or it might not be a hallucination, and we might not have a full account of what the fuck goes on in the human consciousness, especially during altered states.
Absolutely.
And to go one way or the other, I think, is absurd.
We don't need to do that.
We don't need to.
We can just
we
say
don't
that
know.
here is an incredibly valuable experience.
Yes.
Which is available to us, and which let's not forget that humanity has had a long relationship with these plants. This is one of the problems, again caused by the war on drugs, which is that it sought to intervene in that relationship and demonize and make it dangerous to use them because you might get sent to prison. You can get sent to prison for a very long time. People live in fear. What we need is a nurturing society which makes it possible for people to have these experiences in the safest, most loving environment. The love is key. If you're feeling threatened in your head at a particular time, if you're in a space that is uncomfortable or difficult for you, the chances are the psychedelic experience will also be uncomfortable and difficult. The more that you can control the space, the more that you can be surrounded by others who love you and have your best interests at heart, the more likely you are to have a very beneficial experience from that. And those beneficial experiences can and frequently do include painful moments when you come to realization of actually who you are and what you are. And this is, I mean, it's absolutely fundamental with ayahuasca, is what I call the life review, where you see the impact of your behavior on others, which previously you had insulated yourself from. And when you see the pain you'd caused, you might have felt perfectly justified at the time. When you see it, and you see it with that clarity, it makes you strongly motivated not to do that again.
Yeah.
So it's a very important learning experience. They call them plant teachers. They call them teachers in the Amazon.
That aspect, that learning from your past mistake aspects exists in a lot of psychedelics. It's a core factor of psychedelics.
I would say it's a core factor of all psychedelics.
And I always felt like it's really ironic that law enforcement works against psychedelics because nothing would benefit law enforcement more than psychedelics.
Absolutely.
If psychedelics were legal, there'd be so many less crimes.
So many less crimes.
First of all, the drug crimes would be out the door, and then it would be a matter of how many people are on mushrooms are going to rob your house. How about zero?
Exactly.
You know, I mean, they would ask you for food if they were that starving.
Yeah.
I just think that we have this incredible ally that our culture, our society, we have this amazing plant thing that we've discovered in several different forms.
Yeah.
And we've made all of them outside of our reach. We put all of them outside legal reach, which is insane. It's insane.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what's going on. I mean, why is society on this self-destructive trip right now?
They're ignorant. It's essentially, I believe, and it sounds crazy, but I believe this. I believe that psychedelics are here for human beings to take to move to the next level of consciousness, and they can elevate us away from our warlike ways.
I'm with you on that.
I think it's the only thing. The only thing. I don't think ideology, morality shifts with understanding, with the exchange of information. I think morality escalates slowly but surely all throughout culture, and eventually we may get to a term or a time in the future where we're not warlike at all.
Yeah.
But the best way to do that is through psychedelics.
Psychedelics can help.
And the people who are involved in the running of things most likely are ignorant to the experience. And so what you're dealing with is someone who is 50, 60 years into a lifelong, closed-off ego trip of death and destruction, and they're the ones that are running the world.
Unfortunately, they're the ones that are running the world.
That's why we're so fucked. We're not so fucked because humans are evil. And when you look around at all the nice people that you meet, you get really confused as to how the world can be so fucked up.
How can it be so fucked up?
Because
when people are basically good.
Yeah, most people are good, but the people that are running shit, most of them are not good.
And and they get like into personality types. Like, I mean, if you want to run shit, then right there you've got a certain kind of personality.
Yeah, anybody that wants to be president should not be allowed to be president.
Exactly. That really should be an instant disqualification. You know, you should be absolutely not wanting that job.
It should be like the lottery. You know, like you should like the public. Like a new president comes in every month. You know, and if you do a good job, you know, you get to keep people get to vote whether they keep you for a few months.
Yeah.
And it's just a person. Just you have random qualifications as far as education, as far as your background.
Not some power-hungry egomaniac who wants to push you around, which is unfortunately the case.
And the old boy network, the thing that comes into place when these guys, they're cronies, and they all help each other out and hook each other up and communicate with each other. And then there's lobbyists and special interest groups. And they all want to make sure that this keeps going, so they make sure that the laws continue to stay on the books, that allow them to do all the stupidity, especially when, like, Congress can't be guilty of insider trading.
Right.
Have you seen that?
I didn't see that.
Oh,
No.
let me Google that because I want to make sure that I'm correct. Congress not guilty of insider trading. I think you can't accuse them of insider trading.
Oh dear.
Yeah, oh dear is the right way to say that. Let me Google that to make sure that that's true. Congress.
So basically, they get immunity.
Yeah. Hold on. I wrote it the wrong. Can't be guilty. Immune to insider trading? Let's try immune. Yeah, there's something. I'm looking at some articles on this here.
Well, politicians are always cutting themselves all the slack there is, you know.
That is exactly what it is. Congress believes they're immune to insider trading laws, and there are legal professors that are debating them. And the legal analysis by law professor Donna Nagley of the Indiana University suggests that members of Congress may not be immune to insider trading laws after all. Apparently there's a 60 Minutes piece where they went on about this. So it's one of those legal things where apparently there's probably you have to go over it with a fine-tooth comb and then find out what exactly how it's written. It's all craziness.
A bunch of corrupt bastards.
Crazy fucks.
You know, that's it. They want to do that job because they like controlling other people.
But just the fact that they could say that they don't want to be prosecuted for insider trading, it's like, why is that? How much are you doing? How much insider? Guess what? You can come to me all day and you say, hey, Joe, do you think that insider trading should be illegal? And I'll say yes.
Yeah.
And if I do insider trading, prosecute me.
Yeah.
But if I'm coming out saying, I don't want you to prosecute me for insider trading.
You definitely got something to hide.
Yeah, you got to be like, what the fuck are you doing, man?
Yeah.
That's why you want to be a congressman, so you can just profit off of the stock market, you creep.
So I thought, and I've made this proposal several times, that what I would like to see is anybody running for high office, they first right off they got to do 10 ayahuasca sessions.
It's a great idea.
You know, that's it. That's the first hurdle. They got to do that. They got to go through it, and we'll see how they feel afterwards. Could be 10, strong mushroom sessions. That would be just as good. But they gotta be able to do that. You know what's really crazy? The solution exists to a better world. It exists. It exists right here. It's not like imagine if some benevolent race from another planet came down here and gifted us with some space fruit. And if we eat the space fruit, we'll see ourselves for who we truly are, and we'll recognize our potential. Which many people hold, they're letting go of their responsibility for their own lives. Yes. Yeah. Yes. But if you told people that you would go, wow, that would be great, but it's science fiction. Yeah.
Well, the exact thing
Yeah.
exists
Yeah.
with ayahuasca,
That's
with
true.
psychedelic
That's true.
mushrooms.
That's true.
It exists.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, discussing it is a very controversial thing.
Very controversial.
It's very controversial. Like I've like had producers like ask me like, why are you talking about like TV shows that I'm working on? Why are you talking about illegal drugs? I'm like,
I've been asked to stay away from those subjects.
of course,
by producers.
don't talk. You're gonna fuck up this whole thing. This ancient archaeology. I think you're onto something, Graham. I think you've done some good work. But leave the mushrooms out, buddy.
Exactly.
Come on.
I've had that conversation.
Come on, Graham. You don't need the mushrooms. We're making some money over here, Graham.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it exists.
And I think that was part of the problem with my TED Talk too.
Yeah. We could live in a Narnia world. We could live in a world like Avatar. If everybody was doing ayahuasca, we could pull this world together with a rapid quickness.
Yeah.
If they just broke out ayahuasca ceremonies all over the globe, if it became the next big thing, sort of like cell phones.
Yeah.
Everybody's got ayahuasca ceremonies on every corner.
Yeah.
You could change the whole world within our lifetime in an astounding, loving way,
I believe
where
that.
people would abandon so many of their ideas about business and so many of their ideas about controlling resources and killing people. And
You know, the amazing thing is that it is actually happening. It is actually happening, admittedly on a small scale. But for me, this is one of the mysteries of ayahuasca at a time when the Amazon jungle is under such terrible threat, that out of the jungle emerge these two plants, one of which is a vine, which then begins to spread her tentacles all around the planet and to call out to people. And people are drawn to ayahuasca. I can't tell you how often I get asked, where do I go for a good ayahuasca ceremony where I know I can trust the shaman? Again and again, it's happening everywhere. It's happening in Japan. It's happening in America. It's happening in Germany. It's happening all over the world. And so you get a small but growing group of initiates who have had this shared experience, and we kind of know each other when we meet.
And the initiates that have had this experience are talking about it, and more are coming.
Exactly.
It's building and building, and the ayahuasca tourism in South America is gigantic now. So it's really
it's gigantic. And a number of times I stand up and I'm giving a presentation somewhere, and I'm talking about ayahuasca, and then somebody stands up in the audience and says, don't you realize that by promoting ayahuasca you're leading to the depletion of the rainforest? Quite the opposite is the case. What's happened with ayahuasca is that ayahuasca is being massively planted in the rainforest now because of ayahuasca tourism. Ayahuasca tourism is a really good thing for ayahuasca. It's not causing any depletion, and ayahuasca can be grown in many different parts of the world, and it is being grown. That's the vine.
It's a fascinating subject. The fact that something does exist to give you that experience.
Yeah.
I've always said about the DMT experience that like if you could just show someone like what you see, without taking it, if you could just show someone, they would want to do it. They would want to go, wait a minute, and it doesn't hurt you? Like, no, it doesn't hurt you. You're not going to get hurt. But most people probably shouldn't do it though. That's what I think. Also,
and I think
you
even
need
if
baby steps.
Yeah, if we lived in that ideal world where we as adults had the right to make sovereign decisions about our own consciousness, I think most people wouldn't choose to do it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, if you look at how it is in Holland, where marijuana is essentially legal, and nobody, they look down upon people that get high all the time, and they also look down upon hard drugs because of the fact that you can get most things. They understand with great clarity what's dangerous and what's not dangerous, and people are always going to make bad mistakes.
That's it. You just have to treat people as adults, and you have to understand that some people will make mistakes, and there will be problems. But that should not be an obstacle to what has to be a fundamental freedom.
But what about allowing people into your community that sell them? Allowing people in your community of friends and neighbors that profit off of the addiction of others? Because there's certain drugs like meth.
I agree.
Like I'm not saying that meth should be illegal. Like I don't know whether or not. I don't know whether or not there's a way to handle it where you get the maximum benefit. I don't know whether it's making it illegal, decriminalizing it, making it so that people can't get prosecuted for using, but they can get prosecuted for selling.
It's a complicated area.
Yeah.
Some of these substances are very harmful. Personally, I don't want to smoke meth.
But if you were next door to a meth guy, like you would not want that guy in your community. He's profiting off of enslaving people, chemically enslaving people.
So this is an area where more work has to be done. But I think if we approach the problem from a spirit of love, and from a spirit of respect for the sovereignty of other adults, it'll be a whole lot better than the way we're approaching the problem right now. And as we know, making these toxic substances illegal doesn't prevent their use. It absolutely does not prevent their use. The use has gone up and up and up and up and up over the decades.
And it's kind of unique. The one of the properties of psychedelics, whether it's like some folks, ibogaine has a great result for curing addictions, and ayahuasca has a great result. And the people that are doing these very things and selling these very drugs, both participating in both sides, selling and dealing, could both benefit from ayahuasca.
Sure.
Like if you're a meth dealer, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
Like what an asshole. You're selling something that fucking kills people, makes them pull their skin off of their face.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
One of the first ayahuasca sessions that I went to in Brazil, there was a guy there from LA who was a heavy smoker of crystal meth.
Oh, Jesus.
And he came there in a state, he was just so wired. And it came out as we were discussing, as we were talking, it came out that he had a rival in love, and he'd gone out and got a gun, and just before he left LA, the best decision he ever made was to leave LA and come down to Brazil and drink ayahuasca. He was getting close to the point of murdering a fellow human being. Wow. 2 weeks in Brazil, 5 ayahuasca sessions, completely turned him around, and he revolutionized his life.
It's incredible.
And he became such a loving, positive, warm-spirited person, and all his anger was gone, and he moved on in his life in amazing ways. And I've seen many, 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 many examples of that. I don't want to pretend, however, that it's all sweetness and light in the garden. There are problems also with ayahuasca, and people should be aware of this. There are shamans who are abusing their power. There are, if you go to a place like Iquitos in Peru, you'll find there's 2 types of shamans. One type are the curanderos, they're the healers. The other type are the brujos, they're sorcerers, actually. And they will use ayahuasca to gain power over others. And there have been 1 or 2 horrendous cases that occur with this. So I do think the intention of the individuals who are involved is also an important part of this. And psychedelics, I agree with you that the single one-stop shop to transform our society and make it a better place, a far better place than it can be today, is the correct use of psychedelics. But I would be wrong to say that psychedelics are a magic potion, because they're not. And there have been societies which have misused psychedelics profoundly. I would say that the Aztecs in Mexico were one of those.
What did they do?
Well, they used psilocybin, but they did not use it for gentle consciousness exploration. The Aztecs used psilocybin preparatory to rituals of human sacrifice. The Aztecs used psilocybin as a vehicle to communicate with their deities, and those deities included characters like Huitzilopochtli, who was the war god, who spoke to Montezuma was the last Aztec emperor, and that's 1519. When Cortez appears in Mexico, and Montezuma was in daily communication with the war god by means of psilocybin mushrooms, and what the war god was telling him to do, there's demons out there as well as angels. What the war god was telling him to do was to kill people and to stretch them over a stone and cut out their hearts. And there was a horrendous situation in Tenochtitlan, which was the capital city, which is now Mexico City, as a matter of fact, when they inaugurated the Great Pyramid. Reliable accounts, 80,000 people were sacrificed to the god of war.
In 4 days.
80,000 people. Now, this is a bloody awful thing that was going on there, and psychedelics were involved. I'm not saying that psychedelics caused it. And again, we come to this issue. Are these entities that we encounter projections of our own minds? Or is there some other realm or level of existence where non-physical entities that communicate with us at the level of consciousness exist? Whichever it is, whether it's a projection of our own minds, as you rightly say, or whether those entities are real, is less important than the effects on our behavior. But if what is being projected from our own mind is very dark and negative and wicked, or if those entities also include evil angels as well as good guys, then you can get cultures misled down this path, and I do believe that's what happened with the Aztecs. There's also recently, and again, I think truth is really important. Truth is really important. So let's be truthful about this also. There have been some tragic cases with ayahuasca, most recently in Chile, which actually involved a human sacrifice, which actually involved the burning to death of a baby on the instructions of the so-called guru or shaman. He'd formed a kind of death cult, but their sacrament was ayahuasca. This is very rare, but it does happen, and I think people should be aware when they enter ayahuasca space that one of the things ayahuasca does is it makes you more suggestible. It opens your heart. If a powerful, strong, negative personality comes along and says to you, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, you might just do it. And that is also there possible. So you have to be strong in yourself. You have to be clear on your intent, and if you're not going into this with good intent, then bad things also can happen.
Well, I would also wonder what would it be like to introduce psychedelics into the insane warlike environment of Aztec Mexico in the 1500s. I mean, what would it have been like this living back then, and what would it take to become a person of royalty, an emperor, a king? In those days, it was insane bloodshed.
Insane bloodshed.
They were
a very dark and demonic culture, and unfortunately, that demonic aspect of Aztec culture was, without any shadow of a doubt, mediated by psilocybin mushrooms, and they called them teonanactl, which means the flesh of the gods, and they were used for communication with demonic entities, and we cannot pretend that was not so. Mm-hmm. This was the case, and indeed, if the Aztecs had not been those people who murdered their neighbors, who used their neighbors as a sort of farm. I mean, if you imagine a society which was run by serial killers and
right.
in the interests of serial killers, that's roughly Aztec society in 1519. So they would have neighboring tribes who they would prey on. They could easily have completely defeated them, but they preferred not to completely defeat them. They preferred to use them for warfare every year, make war on them, take captives, bring the captives back to Tenochtitlan, and cut out their hearts. And this is why there's karma. There's such a thing as karma. This is why Montezuma was brought down. I mean, 490 Spaniards turn up on the coast of Mexico and destroy a standing army of 200,000 men. Why does that happen? It happened because the neighbors of the Aztecs hated the Aztecs. They utterly hated them. And they were looking for liberation from that horror that was being inflicted on them.
Well, isn't that a better, I shouldn't say a better, but isn't a possibility that what you're dealing with is a bunch of sociopaths and a bunch of crazy people, and if you introduce psilocybin into their system mm-hmm. in this insane warlike world, mm-hmm. that what you're conjuring up is their imagination.
Yeah,
and it is the inner. I mean, the desire to manifest these things that would ask them to do horrible things. Yeah. Yeah. This is a core behavior pattern in human beings when they get in control of armies.
Yes, yeah, it is. Yeah.
Absolute, complete, total ruthlessness. Barbaric behavior is not only is it beneficial, but it's necessary.
It's applauded.
Yeah, it's applauded. It's necessary.
And it wins you medals.
And if you don't do it, someone around you is going to do it, so you have to do it.
Yeah. So there's the interesting question right there. I mean, we have armies now in the world today, mm-hmm. which are going out doing murderous stuff,
right?
And so the question is, if we were to be in such a position that we could massively introduce psychedelics into those armies, would it actually make them worse or better? I'm not sure what the answer is. You know, I'm not sure what. It's
very honest of you to not be sure, and that is I think there's no way to be sure. We know that the Vikings they berserkered on mushrooms.
They were using
was it Amanita muscaria they took?
Muscaria,
yeah. I never had much luck with that.
Me neither.
Yeah, that's what I hear from a lot of people.
Me neither. So
it felt weird.
If you want to have luck with it, you've got to pass it through
urine.
You've got to pass it through a reindeer or through the bladder of a shaman.
Yeah.
Then it'll work. You know.
Oh, how convenient. You have to drink shaman piss.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the thing that they always say. You have to recycle your urine. I'm like,
It's as though
good luck.
the body functions as a filter.
Yeah.
And it removes certain impurities, which then allow the good stuff to remain, and that comes through in urine. And apparently, you can pass it through 7 human bodies. It doesn't lose.
Hey, easy. I know a buddy who did it. He was on mushrooms, and they told him to drink his urine. He's like, I am so high right now. I do not need to drink my urine. And they're like, trust me, drink your urine. And he said he drank his urine. It was like just getting shot through a cyclone.
Right.
Boom! He said
Yeah.
the whole thing just took some incredible path
Yeah.
from drinking his own urine.
Yeah, I must say that's not an experience I've had or would welcome, but that's what the research shows.
I have drunk my own urine on several occasions.
Have you?
Yeah, just to see, because I read about urine therapy, so I wanted
Okay.
to find out what it was about.
It's a
does
big
it-
thing in
does
India,
It,
yeah,
does it
yeah.
really make you feel better when you're sick? And it did work, but it might have been placebo. I don't know. But there was one time when I was sick and I took it. I called my friend Jan up and I'm like, dude, I drank my own piss and it worked. It was crazy because he was like big on it. You know, he's big on urine therapy.
Does
and
it taste
alternative
okay?
stuff. It doesn't taste nearly as bad as you would think it tastes.
Okay.
The idea is a lot worse than the actual reality of
Right.
the
Yeah,
urine.
the idea is hard to grasp.
Yeah, but it's just like warm water. It's
Okay.
not horrific tasting. You
Okay.
gag a little when you smell it. You're like, I can't believe I'm going to drink this. But once you're actually drinking it, it's not that big a deal. I haven't done it in a long time. I don't want to say like Lyoto Machida, who's a famous UFC fighter. He drinks his own urine every morning.
Okay.
And there's another guy, Juan Manuel Marquez, a famous boxer from Mexico. Same thing.
Yeah.
Was drinking his own. I think he quit. He
But
gave
if you're
up
going
on
to do
urine
that, you
drinking.
might as well have some Amanita muscaria in there.
Yeah, you might as well. And even then, yeah. I wonder if when a person goes completely psycho, when you're living in war, and one of the things about the Mexicans, the Aztecs, rather, is I don't even think they had horses yet.
No, they didn't. This is one of the reasons, again,
Yeah.
why a relatively small force of Spaniards were able to defeat them.
Yeah.
Was because the horse had been extinct in the Americas for 12,000 years.
Wow.
From the end of the last ice age. And so when the Spanish turned up with actually only 16 horses, 16 heavy hunters that were trained for warfare, European armies had thousands of years to develop strategies to deal with men on horseback. And there were definite specific tactics and responses that you used when you were charged. But the Maya and the Aztecs, they had no idea what they were looking at. They actually, if you look at their accounts, which I've done, you'll find that they initially thought that they were dealing with supernatural beings, which were part deer, actually, because that was the nearest animal that they could relate to a horse, part deer and part human. And they didn't know how to handle these things, and they're coming down at you at 25 or 30 miles an hour. They're covered in armor, the horse and the man, and it's a pretty terrifying prospect. And they broke armies of tens of thousands of men were just fled in terror at the sight of these entities charging down on them. Eventually, they learned, and there's a famous case that one of the tribes in Mexico that fought most vigorously against Montezuma were a people called the Tlaxcalans. He used them for human sacrifice. They're very independent, spirited people, great warriors. And you would have thought when the Spanish came into Mexico that the first people who would become their allies would be the Tlaxcalans. But in fact, the Tlaxcalans had a heroic character called Xicotenca, who was their battle king. And he saw the future, and he saw what Spain would eventually do to Mexico. And so initially, and very hard, he fought the Spanish, tooth and nail, for over a long campaign that lasted about 6 weeks. And during that campaign, on one occasion, one of his warriors actually took the head off a horse with a single blow of their weapon, which was a bit like a sword. It was made of wood. It was called a macuahuitl, and it had flakes of obsidian lined along the edges of the blade. And that horse was not wearing armor that day, and the horse was beheaded. Shocked the Spanish. It was the first time suddenly there was proof for the people in front of them that these animals were not supernatural, that they could be killed. And but eventually, Cortez was a terrorist. He went around massacring whole villages. He burned people at the stake. He fed people to dogs. And eventually, the Tlaxcalans did the calculation, and they said, we better join this guy rather than carry on with this. And so eventually they did join forces with him, and suddenly he had 100,000 auxiliaries who were ready to take Moctezuma on.
Jesus Christ. Can you imagine living back then?
Extraordinary time.
Strange.
And I have to
times.
say, although I really detest a lot of